Rory McIlroy has done something no player has ever dared to do. Not Tiger, not Jack, not any of the legends who came before him. He looked at the PGA Tour's rulebook, he looked at his schedule, and he made a choice that has sent shockwaves through the entire sport. Right now, Rory McIlroy is on track to play only 14 official PGA Tour events this season. The rule says he needs 15. That's not a suggestion. That's not a guideline. That's the requirement every single member must meet. Unless you're Rory McIlroy. Because here's where it gets interesting. Rory didn't ask for permission. He didn't submit a formal request begging for an exception. He informed the tour of his intentions. His legal team made it crystal clear. Rory will play the schedule he wants, and the tour will figure out how to handle it. That decision alone would have been enough to shake the foundation of professional golf. But Rory wasn't finished. What happened next made everything before it look like a warm-up. Brian Rolapp, the man who took over as PGA Tour Commissioner just last year, now finds himself trapped between two impossible choices: punish his biggest star and risk losing him forever, or bend the rules and watch his credibility shatter in front of millions of fans. He's choosing the path of least resistance, and the golf world is furious. So here's the question that nobody in Ponte Vedra wants to answer. If the rules don't apply to the biggest names, are they really rules at all? Or is the PGA Tour admitting that some players are simply more equal than others? Before we get into exactly how we got here, and why Rory's ultimatum might change professional golf forever, I want to hear from you. Do you think Rory deserves this exception? Or is the tour making a huge mistake by showing favoritism to its biggest star? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to stay ahead of every twist in this story, hit that subscribe button, because this story isn't just about one player's schedule, it's about who really controls the future of the PGA Tour. Now, to understand just how big this really is, you need to know what Rory is actually up against. The PGA Tour rulebook is clear. Every member must play at least 15 co-sponsored or approved tournaments per season. Miss that number, and you face consequences. Historically, that has meant a one-year suspension. It's happened exactly twice before. Seve Ballesteros in 1986, Martin Kaymer in 2016. Both were punished. Both had to sit out. The rule applied to them exactly as written. So why would it be any different for Rory McIlroy? Because buried deep in that same rulebook is a clause that changes everything. It says the commissioner, at his discretion, can reduce the 15-event requirement for a foreign member who demonstrates extraordinary circumstances. Now, that's a lot of legal language for something that basically means the boss can do whatever he wants if he decides there's a good enough reason. And Rory fits the foreign member part perfectly. He's from Northern Ireland. That qualifies him for what they call the home circuit exception. He's also a life member, a status he earned after his 20th PGA Tour win. That happened back before the 2022-23 season, and it gives him certain privileges that most players simply don't have. But here's what's really making fans furious. Nobody can explain what extraordinary circumstances actually means in this context. Rory had a back injury earlier this year that forced him to withdraw from the Arnold Palmer Invitational, but he returned the very next week for the Players' Championship and has been healthy ever since. So what exactly is the extraordinary circumstance here? That he wants to play less? That he's prioritizing majors and family time? Those are perfectly reasonable choices for a 37-year-old who has been on tour for nearly 2 decades. But they're not extraordinary. They're not exceptional. They're just Rory's preference. And that's the part that's triggering so much anger among fans who have watched other players get hammered for far less. Martin Kaymer didn't get a pass when he missed the minimum. Seve Ballesteros didn't get a special exemption. They followed the rules, paid the price, and moved on. So why is Rory getting different treatment? Because he's Rory McIlroy. Because he's the biggest draw in golf. Because the tour needs him more than he needs the tour. And honestly, Rory knows it. He knew it when he made this decision. He knew it when his legal team started having conversations with Brian Rolapp. He knew it when he told them exactly how this was going to play out. He wasn't asking, he was telling. And that's the part that should terrify every player who isn't named Rory McIlroy. Here's something that might surprise you though. Rory isn't just ignoring the rule. He's not hoping nobody notices. He's been having constant dialogue with the PGA Tour leadership about this for months. In his own words, and this is a direct quote, "The PGA Tour and I are in constant dialogue. I speak to Brian and his team a lot. Not just about that, but about everything else. We'll figure it out. I made them aware that this could happen at the end of last year. They know. That's not the language of someone who's worried. That's not the language of someone who's asking for forgiveness. That's the language of someone who's already decided the outcome and is just waiting for everyone else to catch up. And his legal team is fully involved. This isn't casual conversation between friends. This is a player using every bit of leverage he has to force the tour's hand. Rory has been on tour for nearly 20 years. He's been playing professionally since he was a teenager. He's won 6 majors. He's been the face of European golf and one of the biggest names in the sport globally. At 37, he's earned the right to prioritize what matters to him: family time, rest, peaking for the biggest events. He's been very open about this. He said his enthusiasm is still there, but he wants balance. He wants to show up fresh and ready, not exhausted and burned out. And honestly, it's working. He's had good performances this year. The starts of his tournaments have been strong. There's no argument that the approach is hurting his game. But here's the thing. Almost every player on tour wants those same things: balance, rest, time with family, the ability to prepare properly for majors. The difference is that most of them can't afford to just decide to play fewer events. The consequences would be real. Rory isn't worried about the consequences. He's making the tour worried about the consequences. That's a power shift that nobody saw coming. That bitterness hasn't faded. In fact, it's only grown stronger. Now you might be wondering why this is happening now. Why Rory McIlroy, of all people, decided to take a stand on this specific issue at this specific moment. To understand that, you have to go back to 2023. That was the year everything changed. When LIV Golf started poaching players, Rory McIlroy was the PGA Tour's most vocal defender. He went on television, he did interviews, he sat in countless board meetings defending the tour's position. He argued with players, negotiated with business leaders, and put his reputation on the line for an organization he believed in. He was the face of the resistance. He was the guy who wouldn't back down. He made himself a target for LIV supporters and Saudi critics alike. He took the hits so the tour wouldn't have to. Then, in June 2023, Jay Monahan, who was the PGA Tour commissioner at the time, announced a framework agreement with the Saudi Public Investment Fund, the same Saudi fund that was funding LIV Golf, the same organization Rory had been fighting against for months. And here's the worst part. Monahan made that announcement without consulting the players, without talking to Rory, without giving any warning to the very people who had been defending the tour day after day. Rory's reaction was caught on the Netflix series Full Swing. He was clearly angry, clearly frustrated, clearly betrayed. His words were simple: "Fuck it, do what you want to do." He later described himself as feeling like a sacrificial lamb. He had given everything to protect the tour, and in return, the tour had sold him out. The decision to negotiate with the Saudis was made behind his back, after he had spent months putting himself in the line of fire. He resigned from the PGA Tour's policy board shortly after. It was a signal, a message to everyone watching that he was done playing the loyal soldier, and he's never really gotten over it. He's talked about pining for the old ways. He said that the tour was actually pretty good before LIV came along. He's acknowledged that he plays less and less as the years go on. The schedule is shrinking. The enthusiasm, while still there, is tempered by everything that happened. So when you see Rory McIlroy pushing back against the tour now, you're not seeing a player throwing a tantrum. You're seeing someone who was burned badly and is making sure it doesn't happen again. He knows the tour can't be trusted to protect him, so he's protecting himself. He's using every advantage he has to make sure his career goes the way he wants it to go, on his terms. But here's the part that should terrify every golf fan. Because this battle isn't just about 15 events or a schedule exception. It's part of something much bigger. Rory McIlroy is also fighting Brian Rolapp on the future structure of the entire PGA Tour. Rolapp has proposed splitting the tour into what they're calling Championship Series and Challenger Series. It's essentially a two-tier system. The top players get guaranteed access to the biggest events with the biggest purses. Everyone else gets pushed into what Rory has called, and this is his exact phrase, glorified Korn Ferry Tour events. He used the RBC Canadian Open as an example. That's a proud national event with over a century of history. Under Rolapp's plan, it might be downgraded to a second-tier tournament. Rory spoke out against it publicly. He made it clear that he thinks national opens deserve better. Rolapp responded. He said he had a chance to speak with Rory and defended the changes as the same tour organized into a much more interesting system. But Rory isn't buying it. He's pushing back hard. And this is where the ultimatum becomes even more significant. Rory isn't just fighting for his schedule. He's fighting for the soul of professional golf. If the two-tier system goes through, the gap between the stars and everyone else becomes enormous. The rich get richer. The events with history get pushed aside for whatever generates the most money. And the tour becomes less about competition and more about entertainment. That's the part that scares people. Here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Because while Rory and Rolapp are battling it out, the real victims are getting squeezed in the middle. Brendan Porath, a well-known golf analyst, didn't hold back. He said they're bending the rules. He called the discretionary clause gobbledygook, designed to let them make it up as they go along. Trey Wingo, another respected voice, offered a more blunt take. He said not everybody would get away with this, but it's Rory McIlroy, which is basically admitting what everyone already suspects. The rules apply differently to different people, and there's precedent for this being a problem. Seve Ballesteros was punished for missing the minimum. Martin Kaymer was punished. Both were bigger names in their eras. Both were stars. Both still had to face the consequences. Even suspended player Wesley Bryan acknowledged that the PGA Tour has the ability to pardon any violations if it's in the best interest. But that's exactly the problem. If the commissioner can just decide who gets punished and who doesn't, what's the point of having rules at all? The real damage here isn't to Rory McIlroy's reputation. It's to the tour's credibility. Every time they bend a rule for a star, they lose trust with the players who have to follow those rules without exception. They lose trust with fans who want to believe the competition is fair. They lose trust with the young players grinding on the Korn Ferry Tour, hoping for their shot at the big leagues. Those players watch this and wonder, if Rory can get away with this, what else can he get away with? What rules will be bent for the next superstar? Where does it end? And this is where we arrive at the question nobody can answer. If the rules don't apply to the biggest stars, are they really rules at all? Rolapp has bigger battles to fight. He's dealing with schedule reform, player power, board dynamics, and the constant pressure to deliver ratings and revenue. He can't afford a war with Rory McIlroy. Losing his biggest star would be catastrophic, but backing down might be just as damaging. Every decision he makes from this point forward will be viewed through the lens of favoritism. Every time he disciplines a lower-tier player, people will ask why Rory got a pass. Every time he promotes the tour's meritocracy, people will point to this moment as proof that the meritocracy is a lie. The 2028 restructure is coming. The future of the tour is being decided right now, and Rory McIlroy is one of the people doing the deciding. He's already on record opposing the championship series concept. He's already made it clear he won't be pushed around, and he's already shown that he's willing to use his power to get what he wants. So what happens now? Rory isn't changing his schedule. He's been clear about that. Rolapp can't afford to fight him. The tour needs Rory more than Rory needs the tour. That's the reality of modern professional golf. But here's the part that keeps me up at night. This isn't just about Rory McIlroy. This is about every player who comes after him. When the biggest star can do whatever he wants, it changes the culture of the entire sport. It tells young players that talent matters more than rules. It tells established veterans that status matters more than fairness. It tells fans that the competition is rigged, and once that trust is broken, it's almost impossible to repair. The tour can't afford to lose Rory, but can they afford to lose their credibility? So here's the truth that nobody in Ponte Vedra wants to admit. The game's biggest star just told them how it's going to be. He showed up with his legal team and his schedule and his demands. He didn't ask. He informed. He didn't negotiate. He declared. And Brian Rolapp had no choice but to listen. Rory McIlroy will play 14 events this year. He'll get his exemption. He'll prepare for the majors on his own terms. And the tour will figure out how to spin it as a win for everyone. But deep down, everyone knows the truth. The rules are whatever the powers decide they are on any given day. The meritocracy is a marketing slogan. And the biggest names don't play by the same rules as everyone else. It's not a good look for professional golf. It's not fair to the players grinding every week, fighting for their cards, hoping for a break. It's not fair to the fans who pay good money to watch the best players compete on a level playing field. But it's the reality we're living in, and until someone figures out how to change the balance of power, nothing is going to be different. The next time a star pushes back against a rule, remember what happened here. Remember that Rory McIlroy stood up to the tour and won. Remember that the tour blinked first. And ask yourself this: if the rules are made to be broken for the biggest names, are they really rules at all? That's the question that matters. Now I want to hear from you. What do you think about this whole situation? Do you believe Rory should be exempt from the 15-event requirement? Or is the tour making a huge mistake by showing favoritism to its biggest star? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get a real conversation going about this. And if you want to stay ahead of every twist in this story, hit that subscribe button, because this isn't over, not by a long shot, and you're not going to want to miss what happens next.